Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification Course. If you're joining us here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters and wherever you are, please be seated. Thank you for the warm welcome. I would have rather had a cold one because it's really hot right now. Just kidding. Okay, so thank you all for coming. If you'd have gave me a cold welcome, you wouldn't have clapped at all, right? So thank you for clapping. We're going to be in Chapter 6 again tonight. We started on Chapter 6, Responsibility in Society. And in the Responsibility unit, if you're joining us online, you can go to the top of the Facebook page there, and there's a drop-down menu for you with all the books. We are in the 5th book in the intermediate series, Responsibility. Go ahead and download the manual. Feel free to use it. Just don't abuse it. Meaning, use it according to the recipe. Don't change it. Don't add to it. Don't take away from it. Teach it as it's presented, and you will have really great results. Promise you, you will. So, again, Chapter 6, Responsibility on page 99. And, of course, what we do every class, we always do a review of the last class that we had. So we will do a review. Before we do, we will go to Lesson Plan 6, page, looks like it's going to have to be page number 6C, page C, Lesson Plan 6C. We're going to be on step 3. Step number 3. Everything seems to rhyme tonight, 3C, kind of strange. Okay. It says, tell students that it takes only a small percentage of morally irresponsible people to adversely affect the majority. Think about that for a minute. One bad apple, I guess that's another way you can say it, right? One bad apple spoils a whole bunch. I think that's what Donny Osmond once said. Right? And it's true. The little leaven, leaven's a whole batch. It doesn't take many troublemakers to wreak havoc in our society. 9/11 was a great example. A few people involved in a plot to bring down some buildings, and look at all the things that have changed as a result. Still in effect, like airport screenings and other things that they've done. NSA spying on us. Not that it wasn't going on before, but it's probably 100-fold now. But because of the actions of a few, this is what can take place, and that's what this is telling us here, that it only takes a small percentage of morally irresponsible people to adversely affect the majority. Have students take turns reading the article found on page 101, which I believe we started doing. Allow students to complete understanding the main point found on page 102 and discuss their answers as a class. So let's go and we'll do a little bit of review here. We started out on page 99, and at the top of the page, remember it says, in order to have a society of responsible people, each individual must be willing to accept responsibility for his choices and the outcome of his life. The peaceful solution. Well, remember, the individual has to be willing, and they also have to be able. They have to be taught. They have to be educated in how to be responsible, okay? But before they even learn responsibility, you remember all the books we've already covered? Character. What are they? Come on, Sam. Acceptance, self-control, respect, and now we're on responsibility, right? And if you were following the peaceful solution from pre-kinder, you would have got the pre-kinder lessons. You would have got the 1st through 5th grade before you even started on this, okay? So the foundation's been laid many, many, many years to a peaceful solution student. There's many people that are here even now that have taken all of those courses. And you've had a really, really super great foundation laid, you know. But if we only catch them at middle school, which we're covering right now, if we only caught them in the middle school, well, again, we're laying that same foundation basically because we're teaching them about character. They've got to know what character is. They've got to know the character traits. They have to know what morality is and all those basic things that you learned about values, morals, and all the groundwork that we got in the beginning. You get that laid in the middle school as well. It just takes it it bumps it up to a higher level of things that somebody would understand at that age, right? Age appropriate material. But they have to be taught. That's the important thing. So they can be responsible for their choices. And remember, they have to know what choices they have in any given situation, or what options they have to choose from, what positive options they have to choose from in a situation. Because anybody can go the wrong way. It's easy to make the wrong choice. You know, that doesn't take any thinking to slap somebody in the face. You know, it doesn't take any brains to pull out a gun. You know, anybody can do it. Youngest school shooter was 5 years old. You know, so it doesn't take, you know, maturity to pull out a gun. You know, but it does take maturity to make the right choices, to make moral choices and be morally responsible. It takes maturity and education to do so. So we learned on page 99 also that, you know, about progress, you know, how our society has progressed technologically. And we noticed, we learned on let's go ahead and put up the first slide. I want to give the folks online a visual. And it says at the bottom paragraph on page 99, although we live in a society where technology is increasing by leaps and bounds, is our moral responsibility to each other increasing at the same rate? Do we treat others with compassion, or do we make irresponsible choices that jeopardize the lives and safety of others? You can be the judge as we explore this chapter as to whether or not we live in a morally responsible society. And I gave you a couple examples last time of how skewed or confused certain adults are regarding terms like genocide or how confused we've become where we think it's morally justifiable to damage property, to kill our enemies, etc. Okay, and as we learn in the peaceful solution, who can we bring harm to? When is it justifiable to bring harm to somebody? Anybody? Never. 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 There's never. It's just like stealing. You know. When is it justifiable to steal? When you're hungry? I mean, you know, after all, Your Honor, I was hungry. You know, I know you're going to understand. I stole that loaf of bread from Walmart because, you know, I haven't had anything to eat all day and I don't have a job. So, you know, what's it hurting? You know, after all, Walmart's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're not going to miss a loaf of bread or a Twinkie. You know, I was hungry, Your Honor. Is that going to fly? How many times do you have to steal to become a thief? Once. And remember what we learned in the last chapter about one time is too many? One time is too many. You know, it's kind of like that meth campaign they had going in anti-meth, not to do meth, but anti-meth campaign they had going in Montana about 15 years ago where, you know, the tribes, you know, the Indian tribes in Montana, 90% of the people in these, young people in these reservations were all doing meth. And it was horrible. It was a scourge. It was a plague of people doing this drug. And they started running a campaign. They called it meth not even once or something like that. Not even once, okay? Because you do it one time thinking, well, I'm just going to try it this one time. and you get hooked. Okay, so they try to get everybody to see that you don't even want to try it once, because you do it one time is all it takes, right? Well, it's the same thing with any more immoral behavior. Do it one time, you might not live to do it the second time, right? Stealing, whether it's stealing, using drugs, or anything like that. So you've got to learn to make right choices in the first place. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. It reminded me, when I spoke about last time, I remember in a movie, it's called Fahrenheit 9/11, documentary about the Iraq War back in 2003. There was a line in the movie where there was a part in the movie where it showed a young boy getting stitches in his head an Iraqi boy who was getting stitches put in his head from a bomb that he got caught up in. I guess he was one of the terrorists they were trying to kill, right? Probably wasn't more than 12 or 13. They said they were going after Saddam Hussein and some terrorists, but this young boy was getting some stitches in his head. And Donald Rumsfeld, while they were showing this boy getting stitches in his head, the defense secretary was saying, and I quote it from the movie, "The targeting capabilities and the care that goes into targeting." He was talking about the United States' targeting capabilities and the care that goes into it. Not to bring harm to anybody except their enemy, I guess, except the soldier or whatever. And we'll see if that's actually true. But he also said the targeting capabilities and the care that goes into targeting is as impressive as anyone could see. The care that goes into it, the humanity that goes into it. Now, mind you, he's talking about targeting with bombs, and he's using the word care and humanity. Do you see how confusing that is? There's care that goes into planning to destroy your enemies? Really? To destroy property and to destroy a person's life? Care and humanity is going into it. It's an interesting choice of words, but it always stuck in my mind when he said that. And you know what I thought when he said that? I didn't blame Donald Rumsfeld. I blamed the people that taught Donald Rumsfeld, and who I really was concerned about was the authorities over him, the teachers that he sat down in front of. Mainly, he went to military schools, right, where they taught him warfare. But, you also have to remember a lot of these schools, these military academies and things, they also have chaplains, right? They have religious people that are blessing the troops as they leave to go and slaughter all their enemies. So it's not just, the military schools, okay, and where they learn warfare, but they're also learning from the adults, those in higher positions, even religious leaders, that it's okay to slaughter people as long as it's your enemy, and we've told you to go do so. We've ordained you to go and do it, or we've given you permission, a license to kill. Okay? Now, is that license to kill found anywhere in Peaceful Solution? No, it's not, because it tells you morality. Moral means you're never going to bring harm, not even harm. If someone slaps you in your face, you're going to slap them back? No. You're going to find a peaceful solution to the problem, but you're not going to retaliate, because if you retaliate, what makes you any different than the person that just slapped you? Right? And I know that's why you have to have that self-control. That's why you have to have that care and concern built in. And you have to have that understanding that that person that just slapped you does not know what you know. That person that just slapped you has not been given the education that you're being given right now. So they have an excuse because they haven't been taught yet how to control their emotions, how to stop, think, weigh out their options, and proceed with not slapping somebody, right? They haven't been taught that yet. We have been taught. We're being taught, so we're being expected, All of us are being expected to put into practice what we're learning right here, right? Otherwise, we're just fooling ourselves. And as teachers, we're really held to a higher standard here, okay? Because if we're going to go out and tell people the peaceful solution is the only way to peace, and if you practice it, it'll bring peace, then we better be doing our utmost to be walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Because you know who would be the first ones to notice we're not doing it? The students. You know, you can't tell people not to be promiscuous and they see you in the bar on Friday night, you know, with some chicks, you know, playing pool, you know. It just don't work. With a peaceful solution teacher, you've got to walk the walk. Because you know what? You will be found out. You will be found out. It always comes to light somehow, right? So, because remember, we're being tested. We're being tested with this positive moral character in every situation, too. So, you know, we're not going to get away with anything. Don't we teach that? We don't get away with anything? We always suffer consequences, right? We teach that, don't we? So we can expect it, too. If we're practicing this, we can expect consequences, too, if we don't do what we're supposed to do. Okay, so let's look at the next. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and, I don't remember the first video I had. Let's see. No, let's not play the, okay, let me first set you up with this slide right here. So, remember what we're talking about here, that technology is increasing, but is our moral responsibility increasing at the same rate? Now, women, you know, and I'm talking about the last 50 years. Back in 1973, we had the Roe versus Wade decision. And, you know, that would have been, you know, Roe versus Wade. Should I row across the lake or should I wade across it? You know, that would have been the decision. But no, it was a court case regarding a woman's right, or a woman's right to privacy, to do with her body as she pleases. Even though the Constitution says nothing about any such thing, right? The Constitution doesn't use the word abortion, but somehow or another, some individuals were reading it, and somehow they read into it between the lines that a woman had a right to murder an innocent child that had no say in the situation, right? Women, you wouldn't think a mother would do such a thing to a child, do you? Like, would you even imagine that a woman, don't most women, like your mom, she cared for you. You know, if you fell down and scraped your knee, who was the first one out there, you know, with the Band-Aid, you know, to clean it off and patch your wounds? It was always mom, right? Mom was always the one, you know, come here, little snookums, you know, and give you a nice hug, and, you know, you okay? You know, moms were caring and they were concerned, right? So put up that slide, because I want to show you in the last 50 years, here's how the women have become even. There was a prime minister of the UK, Theresa May, back in 2016. She made a comment about using nuclear weapons. And if you could play that clip of Theresa May, what she told the parliament before she was elected as the prime minister, they were concerned as to whether she'd be willing to use nuclear weapons, since she was a woman, on millions of people to destroy their enemy. You go ahead and play the clip.
Is she personally prepared to authorize a nuclear strike that could kill 100,000 innocent men, women and children?
Yes. And I have to say to the honourable gentleman, the whole point of a deterrent is that our enemies need to know that we would be prepared to use it. Unlike some suggestions that we could have a nuclear deterrent but not actually be willing to use it, which came to come from the Labour Party front bench.
Okay, so, you know, now normally a woman that age, you know, I look at her as a grandmotherly type figure, you know, baking cookies, I mean, knitting or crocheting, or, you know, baking bread, taking care of her grandchildren. And these men in this parliament were asking, you know, well, if she's elected as our prime minister, is she going to be man enough to, you know, put her finger on that button and destroy millions of lives? Is she going to be able to do that as a woman? And she said emphatically, yes. Okay, so if you don't think women are capable, if you think it's only men, remember, have women been taught the peaceful solution yet? Not all of them, right? There's some women that have, but she hasn't, not yet. Okay, so let's go to the next. Now, here's another example of women in the last 50 years. She was the Secretary of State. Her name is Madeleine Albright. And in 1996, she was speaking on 60 Minutes regarding the death of over 500,000 children in Iraq from the war. Let's go ahead and play that clip and see what she had to say about whether it was worth killing 500,000 children in that war or not. Let's go ahead and hear her own words.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Can you play that one more time and turn the volume up a little bit? I couldn't really hear it very well. I don't think anybody else could. Just one more time.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
So the price was worth it. 500,000 children dead, innocent children slaughtered in Iraq alone, and it was worth it. This coming from a grandmotherly figure, another grandmotherly figure who you wouldn't even think would think such thing. But this is not their fault. This is a result of not being taught true moral character like you're learning right here. This is how the world thinks that hasn't been trained the way we think. Okay? This is how they think. They think that, well, look, you know, if 500,000 children kind of got in the way while we were doing our work of trying to destroy all those terrorists over there, then, well, somebody had to die. I mean, we had to do it because, you know, after all, you know, as soon as we were done killing our enemies in Iraq, we were all going to be sharing a Coca-Cola and singing, "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony." Right? All sharing Coca-Cola and singing Kumbaya, right? It's going to bring peace, right? Which war brought peace? Anybody can name a war? Name me a war that brought peace. See, from the mouth of a child over here. None. Zero. Nada. And it's never going to. But you know what? They still don't believe it. I don't know if it's that they don't believe it or they just think the way you just heard, you know, like, well, you know, if we got to slaughter a few million people in order to have peace or, you know, win this war right here or whatever we think we're going to do. I don't know what you're going to rule out. I don't know what they're going to rule over after these nuclear bombs decimate the earth when there's only ashes left. I guess you're going to rule the ashes. You're going to come up out of your bunker and, you know, after about 3 or 4 months, after all the nuclear soot settles and, you know, the sun possibly comes out after a few months, you know, and everything's dead, you're going to come out and rule? I don't know. There won't be anything left to rule, so I don't know what you think you're going to win. And don't, you know, the funny thing about the people building these bunkers is they think they're going to make it to the bunker. You know, like, I'm going to get in that bunker on time, you know. How long does it take for a nuclear weapon to reach your city after they launch it? Anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on where you're located and where they launch it from. So you know what? If you're in LA and it's rush hour because everyone just found out there's a nuke coming, you really think traffic's going to be moving? You see how stupid this is? This is how stupid this is. Okay? But people are actually that confused where they think that they're going to win and they can somehow escape what they're bringing on the earth. But that's the confusion we see today. Can I have the next? You know, this is the women today. Keep abortion safe and legal. You know? Now, you know, the reason there's a coat hanger there, I probably need to explain to the younger people because they don't understand that they used to use a coat hanger to abort fetuses from their body. Okay? Before they went to the doctors to have it done legally, after 1973, they used a coat hanger to kill babies, children. So that way you understand why they're having that coat hanger right there. And it says, keep abortion safe and legal. Safe? Do you see the confusion there? Safe abortion. Safe for who? Safe for who? The baby? You can abort the baby safely? You can murder that baby safely. And you know what? It's not even safe for the woman. Because guess what? The girl that gets that abortion when she's 14 or 15 or 16, because she's afraid of facing the consequences of her choice. And yes, it was a choice. It wasn't an accident. You don't get pregnant by accident. We've already gone through this. It's a choice. You would have to make a whole lot of mistakes to end up in bed with that guy to get pregnant. I'm sorry. It's not a mistake. It's a choice. Okay? But they try to cover the choice up and they go to the abortion doctor, right? But it's not safe for them either, because let's say they get the abortion, everything goes well, they don't see any consequences, but then later on in life, they have regrets about what they did and they're sorry for doing it and they want to have a child. Well, guess what? They possibly won't be able to have a child now because they've ruined their ability to have one through that abortion. And other similar things that take place with women. Women have a high rate of breast cancer that get abortions. Okay? Because when you take that fetus out of your body prematurely, it does things to your body. Your body's like, where's the baby that was just there? Because there's physiological changes that come over a woman when she's pregnant, and they rip the baby out, and now the body's like wondering, where's that baby? And all kinds of bad things go wrong inside a woman's body as a result. But see, they don't tell you that when you go to Planned Parenthood, right? Do you think they're educating the children about any of that? No, they might give them a pamphlet or, you know, something like that. And, all right, well, the doctor's ready for you, you know. And a lot of times the parents don't even know what's going on, so they don't have anyone to talk any sense into them, all right? Some states, you don't even need parental permission, you know? Can you believe that? You need to ask the nurse, the school nurse has to call your parents if you need to get an aspirin, but they don't have to call about an abortion? Isn't that kind of strange? That's about as confusing as those videos I just saw. Okay, so let's look at the next. Now, so abortion wasn't, there's no more abortions, right? Didn't that case that they just had, the Dobbs case, the Dobbs decision just a couple years ago where the U.S. Supreme Court said no more abortions? Y'all remember that? Wow, that really worked, right? According to this UN or this CNN report here from last year, U.S. abortions reach highest level in over 10 years, sparked by a surge in medication abortion. It says abortions are on the rise in the United States, despite bans that have taken effect in more than a dozen states since the U.S. Supreme Court's Dobbs decision that revoked the federal right to abortion in June of 2022. There were more than 1 million abortions in the U.S. in 2023. the highest rate in more than 10 years, and a 10% jump from 2020, according to a report released Tuesday by the Guttmacher Institute, a research and policy organization focused on sexual and reproductive health that supports abortion rights. The latest trends also suggest that medication abortion is a more common option than ever. In other words, since in some states they can't go to an abortion doctor anymore, they opt for a medication that aborts the baby through pharmaceutical means. But then we have some states that are so, I don't know, I've never understood the zeal and the determination and the lust, the bloodlust to murder children, to where they offer them incentives to come to our state and get an abortion. They're begging people to come to certain states to get abortions. You know, like they're asking them to come be a tourist, you know, in our come over to our state and get your abortion, you know, and that'll fill up our coffers a little more, I guess, you know, if you spend your money over here. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But this is the situation that we're in. You know, I'm sorry if you don't like what I'm saying, but I got to be real. We're living in a really, 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 really messed up society. A really upside down, twisted, perverted, and I mean that in a way that things have been turned morally. You know, the things they're calling moral now are totally immoral, and they don't even realize it. Okay? And again, it's not their fault, because the education system is not teaching them, and I'm sure it's by design. You know, there's more money to be made with your problems than there is with solutions. You know that, right? According to them, there's more money to be made off our choices, our bad choices, than there is on educating us to make a right choice, apparently. But the truth is, what they're telling you is not true, because if everyone started making right choices, we would all live voluptuously. Did you know that? We would all be living, we would all be rich. We would all be having all of our needs met and not having to worry about a thing. That's the truth of the matter. But they've got us, a few people think differently. They think, well, if we stop the wars, I won't make any more money off these bombs I'm making or these planes I'm trying to sell the Pentagon, you know? I mean, we got to keep this war machine going, so we got to create think tanks in Washington, D.C. to sit around and think about how can we, you know, if Iran gets a hold of that nuclear weapon, you know, if they get a hold of that thing, you know, in 5 years, here's where we're going to be at. So we better take preemptive action now, and we better go attack that person right there. We better go attack that country. So they're dreaming up all these things, you know, to be able to go to war. And yes, it's by design, folks. All right, so let's look at the next visual. Okay, all right, so let me take that down for a second. So in the bottom of page 99, remember what we're talking about is have we advanced morally? Like, are we more morally responsible now for our neighbor than we were 50 years ago? It don't look like it, folks. It don't look like it, right? Okay, so it tells you at the bottom of page 99 that the overall trend in all forms of crime has been upward since 1945. Like that mushroom cloud that went up in 1945, so has the crime gone up, right? So has peril. The peril that we're living in today has gone up. Like that mushroom cloud in 1945 that rose from the Alamogordo Desert when they exploded the first atomic weapon at 5:30 a.m. on July 16th, 1945. All of the scientists wondering what would take place when they detonated that thing. They weren't sure, but they were willing to take the risk. They were willing to risk all of humanity and their own lives to find out. Whew. They made it, right? But now they regret it. You know, Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, he regretted it. He was very sorry that he did this. He was very sorry that they ever created this thing, this monster. Okay, so let's go to page 100, and let's look at the character of crime. So it says, let's go to the next slide. I think I have a visual. So the character of crime, it says, one way to determine if individuals in a society are morally responsible for each other is to examine the rate of crime in that society. Now, crime, and now you're going to have to underline this or highlight it in your book. Crime is defined as a grave or serious offense, especially against morality. Crimes such as burglary, rape, murder, and assault, and notice it says assault is to be physically aggressive, are examples of ways people are morally irresponsible to each other. Okay, so we've got this crime thing under control here in our society, right? It's all under control? No, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. There's over 3 million people that are in prisons in America today. The highest incarceration rate in the world. And how's that working for us? How's that correctional system working for us? Is that working well? Well, I think some people, a few people, you know, they go to prison and they're like, you know what? I'm not ever going back, man. I learned my lesson. Well, they learned their lesson to either A, be more careful and not get caught, right? Or B, I just don't want to go there anymore because I like going to my refrigerator when I want and eating my sandwich and having my ice cream and turning my lights off when I want them off and not having somebody watch me take a shower. And, you know, I want to be free. So they learn their lesson and they never go back. But you know what? 60 some odd percent keep coming back. That's called recidivism, over and over and over. It's like I used to say, what I was doing, life on the installment plan, you know, 10 years here, 2 years there, 6 months here, you know, a little here, a little there. Life on the installment plan. And you know what? When I went to jail, it was like old home week. Hey, man, I haven't seen you in 2 years. Last time I seen you was at the Ketchikan Correctional Center, right? Oh, yeah, I remember. We were all friends. We all knew each other. We all grew up together in jail. I wasn't afraid to go to jail. I knew everybody there. It was like family. You know, the first time I went to jail, I was 11 years old. So, and then I was institutionalized more than once for 2 years at a time in my juvenile years, and I got to know everybody. I knew who everybody was. So when I went to jail, I wasn't afraid of, it was like I get to see all my friends, right? Now, I didn't like the fact that I couldn't go nowhere and I couldn't just walk through that wall and, you know, go commit some more crimes, you know. I mean, I didn't like that part, but, you know, I wasn't afraid. Because you know why? Well, let's see. In Alaska at that time, and I'll just share this with you, because we're talking about correctional institutions. Okay, so if we had a clean, like they used to call them pods, you know, a pod was like a big room with 25 cells, some tables, a television. And back then, you could have hanging plants in your room. You could have Walkmans. You could have all the tapes you wanted, Walkman tapes. You could have your own street clothes. You didn't have to wear jail clothes. You could have money. You could have jewelry. It was kind of like being on the street almost, except you couldn't leave. And so there wasn't really any, it was kind of too easy, you know, on some people. I kind of don't know where I was going there, but putting it in your mind that, you know, Okay, yeah. So if we had a clean pod, if we cleaned our pod once a week, you know, and when the warden or the superintendent would come through the prison to inspect all the pods to see how they were doing every Wednesday. Every Wednesday is when they would come through. And if we had a clean pod and we passed inspection, we were given a reward. On Friday and Saturday night, we got a reward. And guess what that reward was? Late night. Late night, and then late night, we got movies we got to watch. We got to choose whatever movie we'd like or whatever the one the guard would bring in. They would bring in a movie or two movies, and we would watch a movie. Somebody here has been in prison. They said late night. So, okay, so he's never going back, though. You know, that's a great thing. Now he's learning the peaceful solution, so he don't need to go back. But they would give us a movie, you know, Scarface, Less Than Zero, you know, or, you know, some movie about drugs and crime and murder and rape and robbery and, you know, the same things we were there for. You know, because after all, we were being corrected, you see. We were being corrected for our bad behavior, so we had to have a movie like that, right? You know, we had to be able to see a woman being raped, and we had to see a child being molested, and we had to see someone being shot with a gun, have their head cut off. We had to see that, you know, because we were being corrected. What a mess we're in. What a mess we're in. We don't even realize that the very things that we don't want to see is what we're showing them. We're actually promoting it, and we're actually, I'm not saying we are, but the correctional system is promoting the very things that they don't want them to do, rewarding them with these kind of things. And of course, you know, if you went on the bookshelf, you know, if they had the book cart they would roll around, or they had them in your dorm or whatever, you know, on the bookshelf, it was the same material, murder, stealing, you know. I mean, it was just books about how to commit crimes, basically. So basically, the prisons and the jails were like, you know, going to robbery 101 class, you know. And then you met up with some other hoodlums, and you're all talking about, hey, man, I can't wait till when you getting out? A couple years. Man, let's hook up when we get out, man. I got the brains, you got the looks. Let's make lots of money, you know. I mean, that's kind of how it was, you know. We could team up, and man, I've learned this time. I know why I got caught. Next time, I'm going to commit the perfect crime. They're not going to catch me. And if I got you helping me and you can go a long way, buddy. I mean, this is how it was. Unless you really wanted to change, you really didn't have much help. You had to do it yourself. You had to make the choice yourself. And like I said, I tried a lot of different things, but it wasn't until the peaceful solution rolled around in my jail, in my prison, that I finally figured it out, right? I finally figured out somebody wasn't just telling me not to steal. They were telling me how not to steal, you know. Now it started making sense. Now I started getting the groundwork, the foundation that I needed to make better choices, okay? And it didn't come till the peaceful solution came around. It just really didn't, you know. And I'm very thankful for the peaceful solution. Okay, so back on page 100, second paragraph. Remember, morally responsible people are considerate and compassionate. And I do have a visual up, too. Thank you. Remember, morally responsible people are considerate and compassionate. They use discipline and self-control to make choices that demonstrate respect for themselves and others. They are people of integrity. And remember, the word integrity on page 18 of the character unit means the end result of internalizing positive character traits that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes. That's what's called integrity. Remember, you have to internalize these things, which means these moral principles. You have to be internalized, meaning you have to be taught. And then you have to actually practice them, you know, consistently. Remember what we learned a few pages ago in the last chapter about that recipe for maintaining? One of them was self-control. Maintaining a see if I can find it. I remember what page it was. That's what I get for not writing it down. Okay, there it is. Maintaining a responsible character on page 78. Remember the ingredients? Self-control, consistency, determination, discipline, sacrifice, delayed gratification. Remember all those main ingredients. Don't forget. So back to page 100. Let's go to the next visual. It says, however, there are also many others who have not learned the value of being morally responsible, so they're likely to possess negative character traits such as selfishness, greed, hate, lack of self-control, and aggression. Therefore, they are more likely to commit crimes. Now, when even one crime is committed, theft, for example, it can change the way people conduct their lives. It says, like, for instance, you have, if there's a crime in a neighborhood, now people get nervous. Somebody broke in someone's house, neighbors talk. They go to the neighbors and they say, hey, somebody broke in my house. Can you be watching out for, anything that looks suspicious? Next thing you know, I see all the time, I see videos sometimes of people just walking the neighborhood. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just walking around the neighborhood, and a police officer stops. Can I see some ID? Like, what? Did I do something? I'm just walking around the neighborhood. Yeah, but you look suspicious, or the neighbor thought you were up to something. Well, what? I'm walking. It's a free world, isn't it? Can I just walk? Yeah, but that neighbor over there, they're worried that, you might be up to something, you see. And then some kind of altercation. Sometimes people don't practice self-control, and they lose it with the cop because the cop is asking for ID, and they're like, well, I haven't done anything. I don't need to give you my ID, And it might just be some kind of innocent thing, but it escalates into something that, because the person doesn't want to show their ID. And next thing you know, the cop's shooting them. This is what it's turned into now. But it's because people haven't been trained. When a police officer asks you a question, just answer it, for the most part. Now, it doesn't mean that, you don't have a right to remain silent. What you say can and will be used against you. Remember that. But if a cop stops you and they ask to see your ID, you need to give them the ID. Okay? Unless you want to look like Swiss cheese at the end of this, like some people do, because they won't give up their ID. They won't roll their window down. They challenge the authority. And, a lot of people have lost their life by challenging the authority, and all they had to do was just comply with the authority. And now they're in the grave, okay? And I guarantee you, if they had to do it all over again, they would have rolled their window down. They would have given the officer their ID. They wouldn't have tried to attack the police officer or whatever it was they did, right? And I'm not saying, some people are out of their minds. Some people's minds are not working correctly. And they do things. They'll lunge at a police officer or something, and you got to not be in your right mind to lunge at a police officer when he's got a gun drawn on you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just not... And a police officer should understand that person is not in their right mind. But remember, when they go to police academy, what are they trained to do? Yeah, they sit there and teach them how to shoot people. They got a chart over here with a body, and they aim for the head and the heart. So that's what they're trained to do. So you need to keep that in your mind when you're dealing with the authorities, the police. You got to keep that in mind. What I've learned to do, if I ever got pulled over, I keep both hands on the wheel, okay, where they can see my hands, so they ain't thinking anything's going on. They ain't getting nervous. Now, I got to hand it to some police officers. I don't know how they do it, because at nighttime, they're approaching somebody's vehicle, and they don't know what's in that vehicle. They don't know who's in there and what they're capable of. In this society that we live in today, that's a dangerous job, okay? Approaching somebody's vehicle even in the daytime, not knowing what kind of character is behind that. But I guarantee you, just know whoever's behind that wheel has not been taught the peaceful solution for the most part. So anything's possible. Anything's possible. And so you got to understand how nervous a police officer has to be. And if you know he's nervous, put yourself in his shoes and do what you think he would want you to do so he doesn't be nervous with you. You follow what I'm saying? Use your common sense. How would I want to be treated if I was that police officer and he was approaching my vehicle right now? Because he wants to go home that night to his family, right? Okay, so put your hands on the wheel, you make sure he can see him, and then be polite. You know, be polite. Politely answer the questions. Give him your ID. But don't sit there and challenge him. It's not the time. If you want to go to court and challenge the ticket, which nobody ever wins tickets. I've never seen anybody win tickets. But nonetheless, there's a time for, if you had to do that, do it in court. Don't do it there at the window. You're not going to talk them out of anything. I'm just saying these things because I see all the time people are getting killed or they're getting seriously hurt because they're just not using their common sense with police. And then people are blaming the police. You know, it's like everyone's blaming each other, but nobody's practicing self-control. Sometimes the cops aren't practicing self-control, and sometimes the person they're pulling over or they're encountering is not practicing it. So everybody has a responsibility. Okay, so fourth paragraph. Let's go to the next. No, wait. Go back to that slide. I didn't finish it yet. So it says, when people know that there's a thief in their neighborhood, they become fearful that their belongings will be stolen or their house burglarized. They make sure their doors are locked and close all windows at night. Some buy dogs to scare off would-be thieves, and others spend thousands of dollars for security systems to protect their homes. Crime changes the quality of people's lives. And I don't know how many of you here have ever been the victim of a crime, whether it's burglary, rape, assault, or anything like that. But it does, it does something to you when you start. It's kind of like when I got stolen from the first time and I came home and all my stuff was gone. It's like finally I've got a taste of what I put other people through. It was a horrible feeling because first of all, they took everything, even my underwear. They took my socks, my pants, I didn't have anything left. I don't know who needed that stuff, but they took everything. So, but it wasn't really so much that they took my stuff, because at that point in my life, I was just going to go steal some more stuff anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it was the point that somebody came into my private palace, my house, my property, and they went through my stuff and they took my stuff, right? And they violated my space, you see? And not only did they take my stuff, but it made me fearful. It made me fearful because I wasn't sure if they're going to come back and do it again. I wasn't sure who did it, and I wasn't sure they weren't going to come back and do it again, and possibly I would be there when they did it. So I was fearful at that time. And I finally understood, what it felt like. Of course, all the stuff they stole from me, most of it was stolen anyway, so I didn't. But the people I was stealing from, they worked hard for their stuff. They worked hard for the things that they went out and purchased. And I can't even imagine now what I put people through. But I got a taste of it. Okay, let's just say that. And that's why I'm saying if you live in a place where there's crime, it changes your life. It changes the quality of your life. Okay, it changes the quality of your neighborhood. Think about neighborhoods that are crime-ridden neighborhoods, and then think of nice neighborhoods where you don't hear about crime. A lot of people pay a lot of money to live in gated communities where there isn't any of that stuff going on, for the most part. Now, does that mean that there's nothing going on behind closed doors in the gated communities? Of course. Dysfunction in every family, you know. There's drug abuse that goes on, you know. People that are rich have money, and sometimes they spend money on drugs, right? So it's not like they don't have problems, but they don't have the burglaries. They don't have the, you know, some of the other things that might go on in other neighborhoods. But there's always something going on. You know, is there a family on this face of the earth that you can look at and go, okay, you know, they're 100% practicing the peaceful solution and no trouble? No. Remember, there's dysfunction, as we learned in the character unit, in every family. There's a certain amount of dysfunction, okay? Some more than others. You know, these guys that are in that video, can you go back to that slide? They almost look like, they don't even look like criminals. They look more like singers or something, you know, the 50s group or something. But I guess it's supposed to be a gang, right? Okay, go to the next visual. So, yeah, I must have done that slide twice, because while I was reading, I was thinking, wait a minute, where's my visuals at? You know, I had a crime watch, neighborhood crime watch sign, and a thief with a crowbar, you know, where was that? So I must have done the slide twice, but there for your visual entertainment is the slide that I had duplicated. But remember that people get fearful where there's crime, okay? And because they're fearful, they do certain things, and you have to be careful, because some people overreact too. Like I was saying, you know, every person that walks through the neighborhood, they call the cops, you know, and next thing you know, you got a cop checking you out, you know. And if that takes place, just be courteous to the police officer, whatever you do, you know. Don't do what I saw the other night, some guy challenging the cop, man, and next thing you know, there's an altercation, and the guy's going to prison for what? He was out walking a neighborhood, wasn't doing anything, but then it turned into something. It turned into a crime, you see. That's why I'm saying we've got to be careful how we're dealing with authority. And that's the great thing about the peaceful solution. It teaches us to respect the authority. So if we respect the authority, who's the authority? School teachers, school counselors, police officers, etc., right? Speaking of school counselors, look on page 101. It says, think about it. Let's go to the next slide. It says, think about it. At the heart of every crime is a morally irresponsible person. At the heart of every crime is somebody that hasn't been taught character education. It says, have you watched the news? Go ahead and go to the next visual. It says, have you watched the news or read a newspaper recently? How many reports about crimes did you notice? And I don't know that I'll be able to get through this entire article. Let me see if I can read it, and possibly Catan can pick it up next time. But it's talking about a counselor who was beaten and set, and this was in 2002. I looked up the original article. A counselor was beaten and set on fire, and some teenage girls were arrested for this. Remember what I told you about the girls who normally wouldn't even, you know, are very delicate and, you know, normally wouldn't, you know, want to even get their hair messed up? You know, this is what they did. You know, they took a counselor and they set her on fire. It says, a counselor at a Mount Pleasant Center for Troubled Teens was in serious condition at the Westchester Medical Center yesterday after surviving a savage attack by 8 girls who police said beat her, set her on fire, and poured chlorine bleach on her face. I'm shocked by the viciousness of this, Mount Pleasant Police Chief Louis Alagno said of the assault at the Pleasantville Cottage School. It's hard to believe that we're dealing with children here, he said. 6 of the 8 girls, 2 16-year-olds and 4 15-year-olds, were arraigned last night on charges of attempted second-degree murder. The older ones were sent without bail to the Westchester County Jail in Valhalla. The others were to be sent to Woodfield Cottage Juvenile Detention Center. During her ordeal, the 32-year-old counselor was punched, kicked, stomped, and scratched by the girls before they doused her with rubbing alcohol and set it on fire, Alagno said. They continued to beat her and then doused her face with chlorine bleach. They also cut her hair with scissors, beat her with a telephone, and kicked her down 2 flights of steps, according to the charges read in court last night. Remember, these are teenage girls that are doing this, okay? Alagno said the victim, the lone adult at the cottage where 16 girls live, was unable to escape or call for help. She had just begun the 11 to 7 a.m. shift, taking over for 2 counselors who worked during the day. The attack ended sometime after midnight when the girls saw some adults walking toward the cottage and fled, police said. At that point, the counselor managed to run to another cottage for help. She was in severe pain but lucid when a cottage employee drove her to the hospital. Richard Altman, chief executive officer of the JCCA, called the attack, quote, a gross violation of the community norm at Pleasantville Cottage School. It is so far out of bounds that we believe the girls involved in the assault have to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, unquote. While not offering any excuses for their actions, Dennis Gaffarty, resident director, noted that the girls were assigned to the cottage because they have emotional problems. Quote, these are kids who have tragic backgrounds, kids who have been abused and whose families have struggled themselves, he said, unquote. So, notice, at the heart of this case that we see here, what was the problem? What was the real problem here with these girls? They weren't educated by their family. Their family wasn't even educated in moral responsibility, you see? And this is the problem. This is at the heart of the problem, is the lack of moral training that our children, they're not getting it, okay? Now, am I making excuses for them? They should know better, right, than to douse somebody with lighter fluid or alcohol and light them on fire and kick them down 2 flights of stairs. That's true. They should know better than that. But remember, where does everything start? Where does every action start? Your thoughts. They weren't taught to control the thoughts, which led to the feelings, which led to the actions, right? They weren't taught how to control that, so therefore they did whatever they felt like doing. Just like the adults are doing, right? The adults are dousing things with fire too, aren't they? Aren't they kicking people down 2 flights of stairs? Aren't they destroying buildings and dropping bombs on innocent victims? Yes, they are. So let's not make excuses. We're all guilty here, okay? We're all guilty here. All right, well, I'm out of time. I'm guilty of going over about a minute there. The next class we're going to have is on 5/5/2024 at 5:30 p.m. Katan should be the next teacher. He'll pick up on the questions that I just left off on this story about these girls. Everybody have a great evening. We'll see you next time.